Welcome to Chrissy's Books. I am Chrissy. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. And as usual, definitely subscribe below if you like my book reviews because you know I always keep it real. So for this week's book, I read Rainbow Milk by Paul Mendez. How gorgeous is this book cover, you guys? So beautiful. Look at that. Love it. It was published by a UK publishing company called Dialogue Books. They're really awesome. Check them out. Thank you so much for sending me this amazing book, which also happens to be a queer fiction book, you guys. So happy Pride Month. As it is Pride Month, it somehow worked out really well that I received this amazing book. So Rainbow Milk by Paul Mendez is an intersectional coming-of-age story which follows a young 19-year-old called Jesse McCarthy as he struggles with his racial and sexual identity against the backdrop of the legacies of the epic Windrush generation, and also has a Jehovah's Witness history. And then in the 1950s, in the Black country, Norman Alonzo moves his family over from Jamaica to the UK for them to have a fresh start and to have better work life. As they are of the Black race, obviously during this time period, the UK weren't so welcoming to the Black race, and they really struggled a lot and they received a lot of racial backlash. Later on in the turn of the millennium, we follow Jesse as he seeks a fresh start in London. Jesse escapes a highly repressed and religious community, a broken family, and his desolate hometown in the Black country. And while in London, he finds himself feeling quite lost and not knowing who he is or where to even begin. And as a result of this, Jesse turns to sex work as a transition to finding his sort of notion of love, freedom, spirituality, and fatherhood. So, wow, how amazing does that plot sound, you guys? I gave Rainbow Milk a rating of 9 out of 10. I bloody loved this book. So my rating of 9 out of 10 means that this book is an excellent read. It's close to perfection, very minimal flaws. It's a hugely enjoyable read that I would wholeheartedly recommend. So 9 out of 10 for me. Loved it. Okay, so I'm just gonna take a water break because I'm so thirsty right now. Let's talk about what I loved about this book. I actually loved quite a lot about it since it's a very high rating, so let's just talk about that. I really loved this book, you guys. I mean, it really packs a punch. It's just a freaking amazing story. So the story of Norman Alonzo in the beginning of the book was sort of written in like a strong Jamaican accent, which I cannot do, but I really loved it. And I liked how you sort of had that first perspective from Norman Alonzo and him telling us his story about how he moved out here from the Caribbean into Great Britain. And in case you don't know about the Windrush generation, let me give you the 411 on that. So basically during the late 40s to the 70s, about 500,000 Caribbeans moved from the Caribbean to Britain in search for employment and in search for a better life. And seeing as they had fought in the Second World War, they were allowed to do this. So they came into the UK, and then most of them ended up living in the Black country, which is basically known for being super industrial. I mean, a bunch of coal mines and all of that. And during that time, the reason why it was called the Black country is because everything was like pretty much covered in like coal and smog, and it was really highly polluted. So imagine moving from like an incredible Caribbean paradise to like bleak, West Midlands, England, into an area where it's just like just bleak and a bit desolate. And then obviously because in these areas there were like no black people at that time, and they all sort of came flooding in. Imagine the amount of racism and discrimination that they received. So we get to experience all of that through Norman Alonzo's point of view, because they just want to come here, they just want to contribute and work, and there were a complete lack of resources, no housing. It was just absolutely dreadful and terrible for this generation. And the reason they call the Windrush generation is because obviously they all sort of came flooding during this time. And then later on in the 60s and 70s, the UK government put some very strict immigration rules down and basically stopped anyone else from coming in. And the people that were already, the Commonwealth citizens that were already in the UK were allowed to stay, and they were granted permanent residence. This is really interesting stuff. You should actually look it up, because there was a huge scandal of the Windrush generation a few years ago, and it's just absolutely fascinating to hear about all of this. And it was kind of good to be re-educated about it, because I knew like very little about it. Even though I lived in the UK for like 15 years, I actually didn't really know a lot about it, but the history is amazing, and what they did for the UK, the Caribbeans, they just brought so much culture, and you know, people never really talk about that. So they really did experience some immense racism during that, in that time. So I really did love Alonzo's story and the struggles that him and his family had gone through, and it just like showed you that you just need a lot more than just hope to go through something as intense as that, which is what he realized in this time. And then later on, in the turn of the millennium, we follow Jesse in London, and I just loved this section of the book so much. I mean, Jesse just goes through a whole lot, you guys. So I really was like heavily invested in Jesse's story. I loved him. I felt like we could be friends. He went through the most difficult upbringing. I mean, I don't want to give out a lot of the plot away, but the things that he goes through is just both heartbreaking and also heartwarming. I mean, imagine being raised as a Jehovah's Witness and then realizing that you are gay, and then everyone basically abandoning you and treating you like crap because, you know, you're gay, and obviously that's not acceptable in that religion. He moves to London, or the Big Smoke as they call it, and now has to sort of figure out who he is as a person, where he fits in, and how to even accept himself as a black gay man. You know, it's just, he just goes through so much, and it's really written amazingly, and I really respect Paul Mendez for his writing in this book, because it is just so readable, and it's beautiful, and it has so much substance. I loved Jesse's character so much. I also fell in love with his self-exploration, his daring sexual experiences, his vibrant personality. You know, even though he's gone through all these things in his life, he still has such an amazing personality, and the people that surround him later in his life are just incredible as well. I loved every single character in this book. Also, during the different time periods, Paul Mendez puts us through his, or I should say Jesse sort of walks us through sort of like a playlist, musical playlist of what he's going through in different parts of his life, and I really love that, because the music in this was like incredible. Like, I could totally imagine it in my head, and also because I love music so much, I just loved all the artists that Paul Mendez mentions in this book, that Jesse feels sort of inspired by in whatever he's going through in his life. I would describe Rainbow Milk as fearless. It is a bold story. I mean, it's just like punchy in your face. It is beautiful, like heartbreakingly beautiful, and it is powerful, because there are so many incredible messages that Paul Mendez mentions in this book that are very relevant to what is going on right now on the news, and what has been going on for a very long time, for many years, for LGBTQ communities and for Black people or people of color. I mean, I loved it. I loved it. There are a lot of issues that they tackle. Even though this is based in the UK, there's still the same issues that go on in the US and, you know, around the world. So I just really think this is a relevant book to read for this time and period that we're in 2020. And you should pick it up. The song that I chose, I wanted it to reflect what it's like to sort of feel free, to sort of feel joyous, and that really exciting time that Jessie had gone through, moving into this big, like, bustling city in London, discovering all these amazing gay bars and Soho and all of that, like, fun nightlife that a lot of gay men and lesbian women go through. And the song that I picked is Love Will Set You Free by Starchaser, which is a funky house jam. I love this song. It's just like a funky deep groove, and I just wanted to pick a fun song. And also, it's Gay Pride, guys. Happy Pride Month, and thank you so much for tuning in. Read this book, amazing queer fiction, and as usual, subscribe if you like my book reviews. Listen to the song, have a little dance. Thank you.